Welcome, traveler. Thank you for joining me today for part 2 of this original fantasy adventure drawn from real Dungeons & Dragons gameplay. Light your lantern, perk up those ears, and listen well. The sigil had become a storm. Lines of corrupted energy raced through the floor, across the broken altar, and up the crumbling walls. The chapel pulsed with power, light screaming from the runes that spun midair like shards of stained glass. The thunder outside was nothing compared to the roar inside. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He launched himself toward the lead cultist, toward the heart of the storm, as Brynna stood tall behind him, her voice rising like a blade, calling down divine wrath. There was no time left. The chapel had become unholy. The air shivered with unnatural rhythm, like a heartbeat too fast, too loud. The sigil at their feet blazed crimson black, bleeding heat and light. Glowing runes peeled away from the stone, hovering, spinning, screaming in a language neither elven nor human. The scent was metal and ozone, like blood flash-boiled on steel. Brynna's prayer cut through it all, clean, cold, fierce. Kaelin's blade caught the glow and turned it silver as he drove forward. His sword plunged into the cultist's ribs. The man shrieked, a sound barely human, as blood soaked the glyphs beneath his knees. The magic reeled. The sigil's lines jerked, stuttered, like a heart skipping a beat. Still alive, Cultist B reached for the ritual's core, hands trembling, eyes wide with a fanatic's fear. He tried to recenter the pattern, but it was already spinning beyond his control. Behind Kaelen, Brynna raised her holy symbol high.
Selu, cleanse this place.
Light, pure and silver, lashed downward like a moonbeam-turned weapon. It slammed into Cultist C, lifting him off his feet. He hit a pillar with a dull crack and crumbled, robes smoking. The circle didn't break, it shattered. Light imploded inward, dragging air, sound, and color with it. For a breathless second, everything collapsed toward the sigil like a reverse explosion. Then, a black flash burst from the center, like a ripple through reality. Kaelen was thrown back into a pew that exploded on impact, and Brynna hit the ground hard, shield first, with her breath stolen by the concussive force. Silence followed, total and punishing. The glow had died, and the wind outside howled through empty windows. The sigil was gone, leaving behind only scorched stone and a cracked, smoking scar. Kaelen dragged himself up, wincing. Brynna coughed, kneeling amid the rash and ruin. They were alive, and the ritual was dead. With the cultists down and the sigil snuffed out, a grim stillness coiled through the chapel like smoke after flame. Kaelen crouched by the corpse near the threshold, fingers steady as he pulled his arrow free from the ruined chest and wiping it clean on the man's tattered cloak. The wood was cracked, but he would keep it anyway. Brynna knelt before the fractured altar, lips murmuring in celestial. Her silver holy symbol glowed faintly as she pressed her hand to the scorched stone. A cleansing prayer, not enough to sanctify this place, but something. They were alive, and the ritual was not, but something about the quiet felt unfinished. Ash clung to every surface, burned cloth, cracked stone, even Kaelen's boots. The faint scorch pattern of the sigil still throbbed on the chapel floor like a wound trying to close. Magic lingered in the air, restless and raw. The place smelled of burnt leather, spilled blood, and a smoky sweetness from the incense that hadn't quite gone out. Kaelen rifled through the cultist's belongings with the practiced speed of someone who's done this before. He found a ritual dagger, still warm, the blade blackened but whole. Its edge shimmered with faint runes, cruel and carved. He wrapped it in a cloth and tucked it away. Tucked inside the robes of the elder cultist, Cultist B, was a leather-bound ledger, half burned and warped by water. Kaelen flipped through it carefully. Brynna, meanwhile, knelt near the edge of the ritual circle, her eyes still glowing faintly from detect magic, tracking the lingering web of energy. The sigil still pulsed with necrotic energy, traces of life essence clinging to the carved grooves. Recent blood had fed it. Her breath caught.
I recognize this. Not all of it, but enough. These marks, they're from a ritual to contact something not of this world. Forbidden, sealed knowledge.
Kaelen glanced over the ledger. You're saying they're summoning a demon? She shook her head, pale and cold.
Worse, something older, other.
Together, they pieced the fragments. The ledger listed multiple caravan shipments. Some entries matched items the merchant's daughter had described. Certain lines were marked for the sleeper's offering, and scrawled on the last page was "Blood feeds the eye. The circle is only the first." Kaelen stepped toward the altar and froze. Beneath it, etched into the stone floor, was a faint symbol neither of them had seen before. A crescent moon, twined in tentacles. It glowed faintly, too faint to have been active, but not dead. Brynna took a step back instinctively.
I don't know it,
she whispered,
but I feel it, watching us.
Kaelen stood and dusted his hands off, eyes narrowed. We have what we need. They gathered what they could, dagger, ledger, Brynna's notes, and turned toward the broken doorway. Kaelen cast one last look back. Then, with a sharp motion, he kicked ash over the bodies, scattering what was left of the cultists. The sigil was gone, but something had heard them. The fire crackled low and steady, more glow than flame. Smoke rose in ribbons between the trees, curling toward the stars. Kaelen sat cross-legged, blade across his lap and wet stone gliding in slow, steady strokes. His mind was on the steel, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Across the fire, Brynna cinched the last bandage around her bruised forearm, fingers trembling only slightly. Her holy symbol gleamed silver in the orange light. Neither had spoken in some time, and the memory of the sigil's pulsing glow still danced behind their eyes. The air was cold but dry, the kind of chill that settled in once the sun truly left. Crickets rasped in the underbrush, and somewhere an owl hooted, then again further off. The scent of pine smoke and crushed moss hung over the camp. Shadows stretched too long, and every snap of twig felt close. Too close. The fire popped, and Brynna flinched. Kaelen leaned over the cultist's ledger, its blood-smeared pages crackling as he turned them. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but edged. They weren't just robbing the caravan. They were choosing pieces. Ritual offerings. Brynna didn't look up from her hands, folded over her symbol. She murmured a line from one of the dusk prayers, then opened her eyes.
There's structure to this. Planning. They're not desperate. They're devoted. That frightens me more.
They spoke low, but the weight of their words cut through the night. If there was one ritual, there could be others. The phrase, "circle is only the first," wasn't metaphorical, it was literal. And the twisted crescent beneath the altar might not have just been symbolic. It could have been a mark of initiation, or worse, a beacon. Kaelin's voice sharpened. We should move, tonight if we can. If there are survivals still with the rest of the caravan, we might be their only chance.
Brynna shook her head slowly. And if there are more cultists waiting, we'd be walking into it blind. We need to return to town, warn the clergy, get names and reinforcements.
The flyer flickered between them. Finally, Kaelen nodded once. Dawn. We decided dawn. They settled in, uneasily. Brynna laid her head on her pack. Kaelen took his first watch. The silence had almost become comfortable when a crack echoed from the woods. A footstep, then stillness. Kaelen was on his feet instantly, blade in hand. Brynna whispered a prayer, and the fire went dark with a hiss. They waited, breath held. Nothing. But Kaelen circled the camp, stepped noiseless through the leaves. Near the edge, by a leaning pine, he saw it. A symbol, freshly carved, a crescent wrapped in tentacles, bleeding sap. He touched it, it was still wet. He returned to the camp, fire still out. Brynna saw his face and didn't need to ask. She rose silently, eyes scanning the dark. They took turns on watch, backs to the fire pit, weapons ready. The stars wheeled overhead. Nothing would sleep much tonight. The fire was long cold when they left it behind. Mist pooled at the bases of the trees, pale and swirling like breath from an unseen mouth. Kaelen gave the marked tree one last glance. In daylight, the carved symbol had darkened, seared into the bark as if by flame rather than blade. A warning, a claim. Brynna's jaw tightened as she turned from it, and Kaelen knelt nearby, fingers brushing soft earth and bent grass.
2 sets. One's limping. They fled southeast fast.
He looked up toward the pale light breaking through the trees.
They're headed for the gorge.
The forest was hushed, unnaturally so. Not a bird sang. The only sounds were the wet crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional groan of distant branches swaying. The deeper they went, the more the woods seemed to hold its breath. Tense, vigilant, shadowed by urgency. Kaelen moved with focus, eyes scanning the terrain as he guided them along faint prints and signs.
See this? Heel dragged. They're hurt. They turned south. There's a forgotten hunter's path there. Leads to the gorge.
Brynna touched a branch, snapped low, sniffed the air. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. I've heard tales. That gorge is old, deep. Locals say the ground whispers when no one's looking. She paused, hand hovering over a splintered twig. A faint glow shimmered to her eyes. Residual necrotic magic. Recent. Then, caught on a thorn, a scrap of robe, black and red, torn and bloodstained. Its edges were scorched. Kaelen plucked it free.
Still warm.
Ash clung to his fingers unnaturally, like powder from a just doused flame. The trail eventually forked, and at its center stood a ring of antlers, staked upright into the soil, bone gleaming beneath the mist. Some were scorched, others were carved. Brynna stepped back immediately. It's a ward, of course. Old magic, meant to repel. Kaelen studied the nearby trees. Claw marks, long and deep, marked the bark 6 feet up.
Not wolves. Too high. Too deliberate.
Something else had passed through here. Kaelen stepped through the ring of antlers. Brynna followed, whispering a protective prayer. He marked the spot on his tattered map, then pressed onward. The path narrowed, then dipped until they stood above a ravine choked in shadow. Far ahead, almost hidden beneath gnarled roots, yawned a dark cave mouth. Kaelen exhaled slowly.
If they're hiding, that's where they'll be.
Brynna gripped her symbol. Then we pray the next circle hasn't started yet. The forest's hush fades as they descend into shadow. Kaelen parts the thorny curtains of the vines, revealing the jagged maw of the cave. Air rushes out, wet, cold, and foul. Beneath it, an almost inaudible sound pulses outward. Not speech, but breath, slow and immense. Brynna shivers. It's waiting. They draw weapons and step inside. The cave swallows light. The torches spit and hiss against the damp, barely piercing the gloom. The stone walls drip with moisture, glistening like flayed flesh. Ancient runes have been carved along the sides, half erased by time or claw. The ceiling vanishes above, lost to shadow. The deeper they walk, the more the air tightens, thick as blood, thrumming with something alive. A distant rhythmic echo pulses through the stone. A heartbeat. The smell of iron and rot coats their tongues. Beneath it, old blood and smoke. Kaelen moves ahead, staying low along a stone outcropping. He moves like a shadow, reaching a ledge that overlooks a vast chamber. Down below, 2 cloaked cultists place bones, deliberately, into shallow recesses in a half-complete ritual circle. Pale, blue-green fire flickers from the enchanted braziers around the room. A chained monstrosity stirs in the shadows behind them, its bodies cobbled together from bones, grave-rotted muscle, and leather. A sigil of the sleeper below burns across its skull. Brynna kneels to inspect the corridor wall near the chamber entrance. These glyphs. This isn't just necromancy. They're making a gate, but it's not finished. Kaelin's voice is cold.
Then we stop it before it is.
The creature shifts, its chains groan. Each bone laid in the floor seems to pull the fetters taut. Not much more will be needed. Brynna grips her holy symbol.
They're feeding it. It's waking.
Kaelen doesn't wait. His arrow pierces the lead cultist's shoulder. He collapses, blood soaking into the circle. The glyphs stutter. The remaining cultist shrieks and lunges forward, dagger drawn, but Brynna is already there. She invokes Turn Dead. Holy light radiates outward, searing the darkness. The creature howls, shaking its chains. The light strikes the incomplete circle. Glyphs flare, fracture, then fizzle to smoke. Kaelen intercepts the lunging cultist and drives his blade home. Silence falls. A final groan, like a ship's hull splitting, echoes through the chamber. A bound monstrosity shudders, then collapses, its chain snapping inward with a metallic snap. The brazier flame grows out. The wind shifted as they climbed from the ravine, cold and sharp despite the afternoon sun. Behind them, the cave mouth yawned in silence, its whispers finally stilled. Kaelen adjusted the ledger beneath his cloak, the pages still damp with blood and truth, while Brynna kept one hand near her holy symbol, eyes scanning the trees as if expecting the forest to rise against them. They had stopped these circles, these cells, but the signs were clear, and there were more. The sleeper had stirred, and others were listening. With the caravan avenged and questions unanswered, the road ahead led to rest, brief, fragile, and well-earned. This concludes the two-part adventure, Whispers in the Pines. Thank you, truly, for joining me on this unforgettable adventure. Your presence has made the journey all the more meaningful. Until we meet again, brave traveler, may your path be clear and your heart ever bold.